Let me out! Let me out! Let me out! Let me out!
Blood. Not hers. Not yet. Shanice had her hand on the door handle before her brain caught up to what her eyes were seeing. The leather seat was warm. The car smelled like expensive cologne and something else, something she knew from work. Something metallic. Blood. Fresh blood. The man sitting next to her in the back seat had it on his knuckles. A split on his bottom lip. And he was looking at her with an expression she could not read, which scared her more than anger would have, because anger she knew what to do with. This was something else. She pulled the handle. It did not move. Locked. From the front. The driver had not turned around. His hand was under his jacket. If you are wondering how a night shift nurse from Atlanta ends up locked in the back of a car she was never supposed to get into, sitting next to a man with blood on his hands and a driver reaching for a weapon, then subscribe right now. Because this story reveals what Shanice saw that she was never meant to see, why the most dangerous man in Seoul did not let his driver finish what he started, and the moment everything between them became something neither of them could walk away from. Let me show you how we got here. Shanice Williams was born at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia, on a Tuesday morning in July. Her mama, Diane, was back at work the following Monday because the Bills did not care that she just had a baby and neither did her supervisor. Diane Williams worked the front desk at that same hospital for 23 years. Never called in sick. Never showed up late. Never once complained where anybody could hear her because Diane believed that complaining was a luxury for people who had somebody else to pick up the slack, and she did not have that, so she did not complain. She raised Shanice and her younger brother, Marcus, in a two-bedroom apartment in East Point with rules that were not up for discussion. You come home before the street lights. You eat what is on that plate. You do your homework before you touch that television. And you do not cry about things you can fix. You fix them. You cry about the things you cannot fix and then you get up and fix those too. Shanice took that last one and built her whole life around it. She was the kid who fixed things. The leaky faucet her mama could not afford a plumber for. Her brother's homework when he could not figure it out. The neighbor's dislocated shoulder one summer when the ambulance was taking too long and Mrs. Patterson was screaming on the porch and Shanice, 15 years old, walked over and talked her through it and put it back in place with a steadiness in her hands that made Mrs. Patterson stop screaming and start staring at her like she had just witnessed something. She became a nurse because it was the most obvious thing in the world. She had been doing the work since she was a child. The degree just made it official. She graduated top of her class. Got hired at Grady, the same hospital where her mama had worked the front desk her whole life. Trauma unit. The worst cases. Gunshots, car accidents, stabbings, the kinds of injuries that make most people look away. Shanice did not look away. She walked straight toward them with those steady hands and that calm her mama had given her, and she did the work. 3 years in, she was the nurse the doctors asked for. The one who did not rattle. The one who could hold a dying man's hand and talk to him like everything was going to be fine. And somehow, more often than you would expect, she was right. She went to Seoul because of a recruitment program. International Nursing Exchange. 6 months at Severance Hospital, one of the best in Asia. The pay was solid. The experience was better. And Shanice, who had never left Georgia in her life except for one trip to Florida when she was 12, looked at that listing and felt something move in her chest that she did not have a word for yet. Her mama told her to go. Diane Williams, who had never been on a plane, who had worked the same desk for 23 years, who had built her entire life inside a 30-mile circle, looked at her daughter and said, "Go, baby. Go see something." And she meant it even though Shanice could see what it cost her to say it. For months in, Shanice had learned enough Korean to get through a shift, order food, and argue with the lady at the corner store who kept trying to overcharge her for eggs. She had a small apartment in Mapo near the river. She had a routine. She had the plant her mama shipped from Atlanta in a box with fragile written on every side and a note inside that said in all capitals, "This is your grandmother's plant. Do not let it die, Shanice. I am not playing with you." The plant was alive. Shanice considered this her greatest accomplishment outside of medicine. She was tired. Night shifts at Severance were the kind of tired that gets into your bones and stays there, the kind where you are running on coffee and muscle memory and the voice in your head that sounds like your mama saying you do not quit. 2 a.m. Thursday. She walked out of the hospital, pulled out her phone, and called a car. The street outside Severance at 2 a.m. was dead quiet. All the college kids and restaurants and noise that filled Sinshin during the day had packed up and gone home, and what was left was empty sidewalks and buzzing streetlights and the kind of silence that makes a city feel like it is holding its breath. Shanice stood at the curb. Her app said a black sedan, plate ending 742. She was so tired the numbers were blurring on the screen. A black sedan pulled up. She glanced at the plate. Close enough. She opened the back door and got in. She was looking at her phone, typing her mama a text. Still alive. Shift was long. Grandma's plant is fine. Love you. She was halfway through the message when she noticed two things at the same time. 1. There was somebody sitting next to her. Not in the front where the driver sits. Next to her. In the back seat. Close enough that she could smell cologne and cigarettes, and that other smell, the one she knew from 12-hour shifts in the trauma unit. Blood. 2. The car was already moving. She looked up. The man beside her was Korean. Late 30s. Black suit, no tie, his shirt collar open with a dark stain he had not tried to hide. His knuckles were torn up. There was a cut on his lip, still bleeding a little. His hair was pushed back from his face and his jaw was tight, the way a person's jaw gets when they have just done something physical and the adrenaline has not left yet. He was looking at her. Not angry. Not surprised. He was looking at her the way somebody looks at a problem they were not expecting and have not figured out what to do with yet. In the front seat, the driver. Big neck. Both hands on the wheel. Eyes in the rearview mirror, looking at Shanice with an expression that had nothing unclear about it. His hand went under his jacket. The man beside her said one word. A name. Quiet. The kind of quiet that does not need to be loud because everybody in the room already knows what happens if they do not listen. The driver's hand came back to the wheel. Shanice's training kicked in. The thing that happened in emergencies. The calm that settled over her like something she could put on, like a coat she kept in a closet in her mind for exactly this kind of moment. Her heart was going fast but her face was still and her voice came out steady. I got in the wrong car, she said. In English first, then in her Korean, which was not pretty but it worked. I'm sorry. If you stop the car I will get out. He looked at her. He looked at her scrubs, the hospital badge clipped to her chest, the phone in her hand with the text to her mama half finished on the screen. Something in his face shifted. Not softer. Just different. Like he was recalculating. He said something to the driver in Korean. The car did not stop. Shanice tried the door. Lock. Child lock, controlled from the front. She looked at the handle. She looked at the man. And she made a decision that she would think about for a long time afterward, one of those choices you make in a split second that ends up meaning everything. You are bleeding, she said. He looked at her. Not expecting that. Your lip, she said. And your knuckles. That cut across your knuckle is deep. If you do not clean it, it will get infected within a day. The car was still moving. The driver was still not looking at her. Seoul was sliding past the windows, dark streets and gold lights and a whole city that had no idea what was happening inside this car. The man looked at his knuckles. Then back at her. Then he did something that made the driver look up fast in the mirror. He smiled. Small. Barely there. Not in the mouth. In the eyes. The kind of smile a person makes when something catches them off guard and they cannot help it. You are a nurse, he said. In English. Accented but clear. Yes, she said. He held up his hand. The knuckles swollen, skin split across two of them, blood drying in the lines. Then fix it, he said. His name was Kang Dohyun and he was not a good man. He knew this the way he knew his own blood type. It was just a fact. Not something he spent time feeling any kind of way about. It was information. He ran the Kang family. That was the polite way to put it. The real way to put it was that he controlled a large piece of Seoul's underworld with the organization of a corporation and the kind of moral flexibility that does not keep anybody up at night because it stopped asking permission a long time ago. His father built it. Kang Sung-ho. A man from Incheon who started with nothing and got power the way certain men get it, by being smarter and colder and more willing than the people around him. He died when Dohyun was 26. Heart attack. The doctor said stress. Dohyun knew better. His father's heart did not fail from stress. It just stopped because it had been running on anger for so long that when the anger cooled, there was nothing left to keep it beating. Dohyun inherited everything. The businesses clean and dirty. The buildings. The network of people who owed things and people who were owed things and the whole invisible machine his father had spent a lifetime assembling. He ran it the way his father would have wanted. Tight, efficient, and without the kind of feelings that get in the way. He was not violent for fun. He did not enjoy it the way some people in his line of work enjoyed it. He used it the way you use any tool. When necessary, with precision, and then you put it away. People were afraid of him, and he understood that fear was useful and he used it carefully. No wife. No kids. No relationships that lasted past the point where they served a purpose. His life was the organization. His name was the organization. Everything outside of that was background noise. He had been in the car that night because a meeting went bad. A supplier tried to change the terms of a deal that was already done. Things got physical. Dohyun ended it the way he ended things. Fast, clean, and with damage to his knuckles that he had not bothered to look at because pain was just information and he had already processed it. And then a woman in scrubs opened his car door, sat down beside him, and started texting her mama about a plant. He watched her now. Watched her open a small first aid kit from her bag, one she told him later she carried everywhere because her mother taught her that you do not leave the house without being ready for the possibility that somebody somewhere is going to need help. She cleaned his knuckles with an alcohol wipe. Her hands were steady. Perfectly steady. Not a shake, not a hesitation, nothing. She was in a car with a man she did not know, whose knuckles were bleeding from hitting somebody, whose driver had reached for a gun, whose doors were locked from the front. And her hands did not move. He watched her work and something happened inside him that he did not recognize. He would not be able to name it for weeks. But it was there. She finished. Closed the kit. Looked at him. The cut on your lip does not need stitches, she said. Keep it clean. She said it the same way she probably said it to patients. Straight, professional, like the circumstances did not matter, only the wound. He told the driver to stop. The locks clicked. Shanice grabbed the handle. What is your name, he said. She looked at him. Thought about it. Decided that a man whose wounds she just cleaned was owed at least that much. Shanice, she said. Shanice Williams. She got out. The car pulled away. She stood on a sidewalk in Seoul at 2:30 in the morning holding her first aid kit and watched the taillights disappear. She pulled out her phone. Canceled the ride she never got into. Ordered another one. Went home. She did not sleep. 3 days went by. Shanice worked her shifts. She ate. She watered her grandmother's plant. She did not think about the man in the car except when she did, which was more than she wanted to admit. Not because of him. Because of the blood and the locked doors and the driver's hand going under his jacket and the very clear reality that she had walked into something she was not supposed to be anywhere near. 4th day. She walked out of the hospital after her shift and he was there. Not in the car. Standing outside it. Leaning against the door with his hands in his coat pockets. Face lit by the hospital lights. The cut on his lip had healed. His knuckles were bandaged. Neatly. The way she showed him. He looked at her. She stopped walking. The smart thing to do was go back inside. She knew that. Every piece of sense she had was telling her to turn around and walk back through those doors and not look back. She walked toward him. You wrapped that too tight, she said, looking at his hand. You are going to lose circulation. He looked at his hand. Then at her. And there it was again, that small thing in his eyes that was not a smile but lived next door to one. Then teach me, he said. They went to a convenience store. Plastic chairs outside, fluorescent light making everything look flat and strange. She rewrapped his hand properly. He bought her a coffee. She told him the coffee was garbage. He told her she was the first person in years who told him anything was garbage. She asked what he did. He said business. She looked at his knuckles and said business must be rough. He almost laughed. Almost. She did not ask again. Not because she was not curious but because she had spent years in trauma rooms where people came in with injuries that told their own stories, and she had learned a long time ago that sometimes the most decent thing you can do is treat the wound and not demand the explanation. He drove her home. Walked her to her building door. Did not try to come in. Did not ask. He stood on the sidewalk and waited until her apartment light came on and then he left. He came back the next night. And the night after. It was not a relationship. Shanice told herself this with the firmness of a woman who knows she is lying to herself and is going to keep lying because the truth is too complicated right now. It was a man who showed up after her shifts. Who drove her home. Who sat with her in convenience stores and on park benches and once on the steps of a closed temple at 4 in the morning while she ate a triangle kimbap and told him about her mama and Atlanta and Marcus and the plant she was keeping alive because the alternative was her mother flying to Seoul to deal with her personally. He listened. That was what got her. He listened the way a person listens when they have spent their whole life surrounded by people who talk at them and around them but never actually to them. He listened like her words were the first quiet thing he had heard in years. He told her things in pieces. His father. What it was like to inherit something you did not ask for and cannot put down. The weight of a name that protects you and traps you at the same time. He never said specifics. She never pushed. They lived in the space between what was said and what was understood, and both of them were fine there. She was falling. She knew it. She could feel it the way you feel the ground getting further away. She told herself to stop. She told herself this was dangerous in ways that went past heartbreak into territory she did not want to think about. She told herself a woman who fixes things for a living should know better than to fall for something she cannot fix. It did not work. He kissed her on a Wednesday. They were standing outside her building in the rain, because Seoul had a habit of producing rain at exactly the moments when something was about to happen between them. He looked at her and she looked at him, and the space between them closed the way it closes when two people have been holding back and run out of reasons at the same time. His hands were careful with her. That was the thing that broke her open. This man whose hands she had seen torn and bloody, whose hands she knew had done things she was not going to ask about, touched her face like she was the most important thing he had ever held. She found out on a Sunday. Not from him. From the news. A raid on a warehouse in Yongsan. Arrest. Names. Photos. And one name she recognized because she had been saying it in the dark for weeks. Kang Dohyun. She sat in her apartment and read it on her phone and felt the floor drop out from under her. Not surprise. She had known. Some part of her had always known, from the blood to the locked doors to the driver reaching under his jacket. She knew when she had chosen to look past it because looking at it directly meant making a choice she was not ready to make. Now the choice was made for her. He called. She did not pick up. He called again. She let it ring. He came to her building. She went to the door but did not open it. She stood on one side. He stood on the other. And through that door, in the quiet of a midnight hallway, he told her. Everything. Not dressed up. Not excused. Not wrapped in the kind of language men use when they want to make something ugly sound complicated. He told her what the Kang family was. What he was. What he had done. He told her about the warehouse and the arrests and the fact that he was not taken in because he was careful and his lawyers were expensive and the system had cracks that men like him had been walking through for a long time. He told her he had tried to keep her away from it. That she was the one thing in his life that was clean and real and good, and he had wanted to keep it that way because he knew he did not deserve it but could not bring himself to let it go. Shanice pressed her forehead against the door and cried. Quietly. The way her mama cried. The tears of a woman who is already figuring out what comes next even while the current thing is still hurting. She opened the door. He looked at her. She looked at him. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff waiting to be told which way to go. I'm not going to fix this for you, she said. Her voice was steady. Her hands were steady. Everything about her was steady except the thing in her chest that was cracking. I'm not going to try to make what you are into something it is not. He nodded. But I need to know one thing, she said. Can you walk away from it? Not for me. For yourself. Can you look at what you are and choose to be something different? He was quiet for a long time. I have never wanted to before, he said. I want to now. That is not an answer, she said. I know. But it is the truth. And you are the first person I have wanted to tell the truth to in a very long time. She looked at him. She thought about her mama saying you do not cry about things you can fix. She thought about every patient she had treated who came in with wounds that told a story they were not ready to share. She thought about those steady hands she had been given, not just for stitching people up in a hospital but for this. For standing in a hallway at midnight with a man who was broken in ways that no bandage was going to reach and deciding whether to walk toward it or away from it. She stepped to the side. He came in. She did not fix him. That is not what happened. What happened was slower and harder and more honest than that. He started the work himself. Lawyers, accountants, the long ugly process of pulling himself out of something his father built and he had kept going and that had wrapped itself around him so tight that removing it felt like pulling out stitches without anesthesia. There were days he wanted to quit. Days the old life pulled at him like gravity. Shanice did not save him. She stood next to him. She held his hand when the work was hard and told him the truth when he did not want to hear it and made him coffee at 3 in the morning when the weight of it pressed down so heavy he could not close his eyes. She did what she had always done. She walked toward the damage. She brought her steady hands. And she stayed. A year later, Shanice's mother came to Seoul. Diane Williams had never been on a plane. She landed at Incheon holding a carry-on bag, a Ziploc full of seasoning because she did not trust foreign food to be properly seasoned, and the face of a woman who had already decided that if her daughter was going to live on the other side of the world, then the other side of the world was going to deal with Diane Williams. Dohyun met her at the airport. He was nervous. Shanice had never seen him nervous. She had seen him with blood on his hands and not flinch. She had seen him sit across from lawyers and prosecutors without blinking once. But standing at that arrival's gate waiting for a 5'4" woman from East Point, Atlanta, his hands were shaking. Diane came through the gate. She looked at him. She looked at him for a long time, the way she looked at everything, with the direct, plain assessment of a woman who has never had the luxury of being wrong about people. You are taller than I expected, she said. She turned to Shanice. The plant alive? It is alive, Mama. Good. Then I guess you can keep a man alive too. That was as close to a blessing as Diane Williams had ever given anybody. Dohyun understood this because Shanice had told him enough about her mother to know that love in the Williams house was not something you talked about. It was something you showed. It was 23 years at the same desk. It was the seasoning in the Ziploc bag. It was the plant shipped across an ocean with a note in all capitals. He looked at Diane and said, "Your daughter saved my life." Diane looked at him. Not impressed. Not unimpressed. Just looking the way she always looked. Like she was still making up her mind. "She does that," Diane said. "Been doing it since she was 6 and set her brother's finger with a popsicle stick and electrical tape in the backyard. The question is not whether she can save you. The question is whether you are worth saving." She looked at him one more time. "I will let you know what I decide," she said. She walked past him toward the car. Shanice looked at Dohyun. His face was doing something she had never seen on it before. Somewhere between terrified and completely devoted. She took his hand. "Come on," she said. "If we keep her waiting, we are both done. If this story hit you the way I think it did, share it with somebody who needs to hear it today. Because sometimes the wrong car is exactly where you are supposed to be. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is the one who needs your steady hands the most. And sometimes love does not show up clean and easy. Sometimes it shows up with blood on its knuckles and locked doors and a choice that changes everything." Subscribe and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment and tell me what part got you, because I already know this comment section is about to need medical attention. This is our Afro-Korean community. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. We will see you in the next one.